added movements that we have in here, like my numbers shot up through the roof.
Should strength be the biggest focus for general population?
Did a snatch and it just fell down on top of me. Like,
Power cleans 4x7, touch and go. Don't know why you would do that. Metcon,
I don't think that's strength work.
it's not, but that's what they would
Okay,
call it.
okay.
So it's just like,
All right, guys, so today we're just delving into training topics for general population. And let's be clear, general population means most people.
Yes.
So we all have, a background in CrossFit. And I think in a lot of those type of situations, people test daily. And I like to think of it like an NFL player wouldn't play a game every day, or an MMA fighter wouldn't spar every single day. And that's what a lot of these people are doing. So we see this problem, and our answer to the problem was to create some training templates for our customers, which tend to be, very CrossFit heavy. So I'm going to ask Dom and Rob, who have written our training templates, to kind of just talk about each one, who they're for, how they're different, and just kind of give us an overview.
I'll start on. So the first one we'll start on is the athletic strength and development. But the thing is me and Dom, like very similar, like in our approach, is the reason why we don't use Metcon every day is, like, I go by principle personally, is I look at it and it's what is the most ideal environment for people to get better doing these movements, set up specifically so they can progress and understand what they're doing, mind muscle connection, like really, really pay attention and be aware of it. Spend most of your time doing that.
yes.
And then some of your time on the other side, which I don't have a problem with Metcons. They're really potent. We really like them. But done daily, that's where we saw a lot of issues when we run into it, because we've done that. I've programmed that way over and over again on there. So the style that we use is completely different format than what you see out there.
Okay, so tell me, Dom, you had a huge part in this athletic strength and development one. So tell me, maybe your process or who you were thinking of, and your philosophy behind this template.
For me, anytime I do program strength training for athletes, I think of myself right after college, right? Jeff can attest to this. When you're in a program where you're being told what to do every day and you're trying to, perform for sport, you're kind of at a loss when you come out of college. Same thing with CrossFit. When you're in CrossFit, you're doing classes, the coach is telling you what to do, that program is already structured for it, whether it's, complete or not, or whether it's, efficient or not, you're being told what to do. So when you're in that low of like, I don't know what to do, I'm kind of going to do what I'm used to, you need direction. So what we did with this program was give people direction, but we did it in a way where it was efficient and it was in that same environment where they can improve and get better. And I think a lot of people are, doing random things and looking for results. Random work yields random results. And what we did was compile a composed, efficient program for people who are trying to get better, still trying to move better, and still have that familiarity with athletic and movement as well, and put it in a program where it can be, progressive and for the general population athlete or individual.
What I like about this one, and I think other people will too, it actually was our top downloaded one when we were, gave these away for free in January, is that A, it taps into your inner athlete, but B, it does that with movements that they probably haven't done before. And I know as you get older, you lose that ability to be super dynamic and super explosive, and that addresses that whole deficiency that is in a lot of programs.
Well, it's play, right? I think the word athletic is play, like athletes play. So for a lot of people in that older realm of training and population, play is appeasing. It's like, oh, I want to play. I want to have fun. I want to, go in the gym and not have to think about my workouts and sets and reps and get bored and sitting there. This gives people an opportunity to play as an adult or to play in a sense of structure, which is really hard to do. Like the sports in itself are structured. This program is structured. So it kind of gives them that familiarity and that bridge between where they're at and where they want to go and still have fun while they're doing it.
Right.
Because also you want to remember is a lot of these movements have to be programmed a certain way for them to actually work. And so what it is not programming them under fatigue. Not that I have a problem with doing box jumps or something in a Metcon under fatigue, but that's not going to develop them athletically. You need to work on that away from there, and then you could bring it in on it. But it needs to be worked on away with proper rest, properly programmed, and then only sometimes tested.
So it's focusing on the skill development.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it's pairing too. A lot of things we did in here was pairing movements that aren't traditionally paired together, and they're complementary. A lot of programs, that do Metcons and CrossFit is so, anti-complementary. It's like you do the same movement patterns over and over again. They're not going to work. Not going to have the same stimulus.
Right.
What we did was pair things together that are complementary and they progress you. So it's like priming your central nervous system with a lot of stuff that we did in here. And you, like I said, again, you feel great doing it and you're not fatigued, so you can get better and you're in a better optimal environment to progress.
Yeah, so when we were programming in there, what you're looking for, so a lot of in athletic strength and development, a lot of it is not just being able to produce the force, it's having them understand how to absorb force, which is basically deceleration on there. And you can do it in several different ways, but we use different tools than they normally do. And we did use some Olympic lifting, which I like Olympic lifting. We're not married to any specific exercise, just the movement patterns that you try to build up. But in Olympic lifting, it's a lot of skill that's in it. And we feel that it's best used for speed underneath the bar, proprioception, and like really understanding timing on there. That's a lot different than trying to see how strong you can get with it. I don't feel they're very good use for general population trying to get stronger.
Right.
Yeah.
Better for timing and speed. Now, there's other tools we can use for like force development and coming off the ground, like for instance, a trap bar and being able to concentrically drive and then going onto a box jump, which teaches them, but not done under fatigue.
Right, right. Okay, so athletic strength and development, I think it's a great phase to pepper into your program. I mean, take a break from a CrossFit program, develop these skills. You will feel like a badass doing them because it's, it's explosive. It's something you haven't done before, and you will get stronger.
Correct.
So anything I forgot?
No, it's just...
We have like aerobic capacity in here too. There are movements in here that will get you in if you're that cardio bug. You're like, oh, I need to be sweating more, I need to be breathing heavier.
Yeah.
There's movements in here and there's programs and workouts in here that are going to give you that same stimulus that you would get in a cardio environment or in a Metcon that you're breathing out of breath. You're out of breath. This gives you that, but it's just way more organized than a Metcon of 21-15-9 and you're dying. Like a lot of people program those 21-15-9 smashers because they're trying to just fill up space in their class.
Yeah.
No. You need to have structure. You need to have efficiency. That's what we did here.
I'm glad you said something because one of the things is we're not programming like strength and then Metcon or like some kind of skill and then Metcon. And like one of the main reasons is one, we're trying to fit it into a 60-minute window on there. Like if someone was in a class or someone's not, they don't want to spend that much time. But what you see is there's an absolute interruption effect that you have, interference on there. If you have a major strength close to a real intense bout of conditioning, which would be a Metcon on that. Also, not only physiological, but like mentally. When someone's working on heavy back squats or heavy squat cleans or front squats, also you got a 21-15-9 of squat cleans in it.
Yeah.
Where are you going to spend your time at?
Yeah.
Right.
And you smash it into a 20-minute window.
It's just not going to work
happen.
really well that way. And I'm not saying never, ever do it. But if that's your go-to all the time, you're just definitely going to get mixed results. And we went into a lot of stuff that you don't see. A lot of rotational work, a lot of ball work, a lot of balance work that you
Single
just don't
leg,
see.
everything.
A lot of single leg. So these are things and attributes that are really like can be beneficial to all people doing it, and you don't see them programmed at all.
Yeah, they're often missed.
Yeah. I personally, this is my favorite template out of the series that we have. And you said the word fun earlier, and training's not always fun, but people want it to be fun, and I think they get that element here.
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
That's
I agree.
very cool. All right, moving on. Let's talk about power building next.
So the power building one, I wrote up on there. So it's a functional take on power building, which classic power building is powerlifting and bodybuilding combined on there. So that's like the truth, but we have a lot more functional movement on there. So it's a combination of like squatting, pressing, pulling, all the classic, because there's the general fundamental movements that you always want to be working. One is squatting, two is hinging, pressing, then pulling, and then carrying. And we kind of work that in there, and then we progress it the whole time on that. One thing I wanted to mention that we didn't mention is we write concurrent training programs, even though it has like a specific title, and then you're kind of going to spend a little more time on a strength. We're still writing a lot of conditioning that are in there. And sometimes it's a mixed conditioning, and sometimes you are going to get a CrossFit Metcon.
So define concurrent for those who don't
know
what that is.
Concurrent training models, and there's a lot of different versions, like everyone from hybrid and everything, but you're concurrently trying to train a bunch of systems together, energy systems. So you're not only training aerobic systems and like endurance, you're training your strength systems and maximal strength. And so those are real complicated actually to do because there's so many different elements to it. We kind of look at it as like strength is fundamental, then you have your conditioning, and then we have the skill, and like you kind of like layer it on top on there. Now, a lot of times in CrossFit programs, that's a sport, and everyone's kind of like really focused on nonstop playing a sport. We're not focused on that. It is a part of what we're doing, and we do like some principles on there, but that is not the base of or any of our programs.
Right. So who is power building for, and what can they expect from the template?
So power building's for anybody that is familiar with any kind of strength training, but especially if you do a lot of functional / CrossFit mixed modality training, and you're looking to spend more time on specific lifts on the squat, the press, the hinge, and the pull patterns and press patterns.
Okay.
Yeah. Good.
I was about to say, we were talking about this before we got started.
Yeah.
Like when I was doing my Olympic lifting, it was literally just 2 Olympic lifts going right into the powerlifting style moves, but then having a break in between the day, then getting into the bodybuilding, like isolating each discipline to make sure, like you said, you're building at the same time.
So that will minimize the interruption effect when there's a lot of time. But when you don't have much time between, you're definitely going to pull away from what you're trying to work. So that's why you see us like, yes, you can do Metcon on the same day as a strength if you had a lot of time, but obviously we don't. But one thing, Dom, I wanted you to touch on too is like, we kind of segmented things quite a bit. And there's a little bit of chatter sometimes online about you shouldn't segment. Like, no. You want to segment things so that you can like focus on those, get better at them, then you can go and mix them. But if you're only mixing things constantly, you're only going to get mixed results.
Exactly. And I think it just comes down to discipline, right? The grass grows where you water it, right? And if you're spending so much time watering like this, you're missing the middle, you're missing the end. You have to take those disciplines and put them into segments, right? And I think that's what we talked about with power building. We all know those people. Majority of our base is CrossFit. A lot of our audience is CrossFit, right? You have that one guy in the gym who's he loves that first 20 minutes of class because it's all strength based, and then he taps out for the Metcon. And you have people who only live for the Metcon.
Yeah.
What happens a lot of the time is those people only grow in that area, right?
Yeah.
So what we've done is create it to where people who are maybe more strength based are getting the itch of scratching the strength, but then they have to do controlled aerobic work as well. That's the thing. We don't have it to where it's segmented to where you have to choose. You're going to get both at the same time, but they're going to be growing at the same exact rate. Now, if you're stronger, you're going to get stronger faster. Your body responds to that. But people who aren't familiar or aren't comfortable with cardio or conditioning, we made it in a way that they are comfortable, and it's self-propelled. A lot of the work that we have in this power building is self-propelled. You're going to get your volume with some of the accessory work that we do when you work in the 80 for the 20. And then people who are more aerobic based, you're going to get that base for training in the sense of strength building. So it's a symmetrical program. Is the way me and Rob kind of program is programming symmetrically. So somebody like Jeff, who is a house in the weight room, and he also has a base with cardio. We build that base, strength, cardio, those are your 2 bases. And then from there, you can kind of get creative with your skill work that you do.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, after programming and trying every style that's out there, and like hundreds to thousands of workouts, and seeing like hundreds to thousands of people like do them, I always come back to that same principle I said before. What is the most ideal environment for people to get better at these movements? Spend most of your time in there. Let them have time in it. Focus on it. Get stronger at these movements. And then mix it and test it sometimes. Yeah. And not the other way around, because I always saw like the other way around. All you did was get like mixed results constantly on there. And then when you go ahead and when the Metcon is your main program, then you've taught everybody just to focus on that and the speed. And you can talk to them until they're blue in the face to like, hey, go slower, really concentrate on your movement. Yeah. But like human nature is human nature. You want to change that? Then just change the format.
Change the format.
Just change
every
the
time.
format.
Turn the clock off.
There's nothing against the law just by making it look a little different.
We'll turn the clock off. I think we take a shot. CrossFitters is like, oh, like what's for time? Like stop putting those labels on the workout. Like it doesn't, what do you mean for time? How about for quality? I dare you to put that up there. Yeah. Rate your quality from 1 to 10 today. Videotape every movement you do. Videotape all your sets. And let's score that and see where you're at. Yeah. I think that would change the whole trajectory of like CrossFit and the patterns and the way you program it. And you would get a lot better results when you do that.
100%. Like everybody's kind of doing a version of the same thing. Yeah. Metcon strength. It's like it's all the same thing. It's like nobody wants to like take a step back and like just change the format. Do something different. Watch people get better. Yeah. Like I've watched people get better and be faster and do a quarter of the work that they were doing before. Mm-hmm. Like hardly see any of the wear and tears.
I was gonna say, and the injury rate.
Yeah. So one thing, and like nobody discusses this, but I don't think people understand. So, for instance, at the level 1, they used to do Fran, 2159 pull-ups.
Every time,
They
yeah.
stopped doing it because people getting killed with the pull-ups. So they started doing 2159 of thrusters and then bar face and burpees.
Yeah.
You go there and it's like whatever, 2 minute to whatever, 5 minute workout or even longer. Really intense. You're sore as shit. I go and I separate those rounds.
Just 45 reps. So,
With like 2 minute rest. You don't even know the next day.
No.
So why are you sore doing it that way? Because you put so much intensity. There's a lot going on, like physiologically. That's a lot more tissue damage than people realize. So when I'm adding up volume and paying attention, I'm super protected on the low back. I'm super protected on the shoulders. And then when you do program something that's really intense, you need to know like, hey, that's almost like double the reps and volume that like normal strength work is right there. So you got to be careful about that because that's what happens to people. It's like over time it just pounds on them over and over again with that. And so that's why you see us kind of write things up a specific way because we're there. Like I have clients. Like I've had clients, but we've had clients going over 16 years now, going into 16 years.
Yeah.
There's no way you wear and tear them over and over again.
well, and they're in their 60s
And they
now.
keep, keep coming back for a reason.
Yeah.
They were hurt. I'm sorry, but you're gonna come back.
I mean, we've
We've
evolved a
evolved.
lot.
Yeah, if we were doing what we did year 1, 2, 3, but it was CrossFit centric, those people would not be around anymore.
No, we
would feel bad about it too.
Yeah.
But back to this template, power building is to build a powerful aerobic and strength base.
Yep.
And I know there's movements that even though it's functional movements, the exercises themselves are things a lot of people haven't done before. So it's introducing something new. People will learn at the same time. I think when they do this.
and there in all our stuff, there is a lot of variation. A lot of it is planned variation.
Yes.
And then you can like kind of say like, well, that's like constantly varied. Yes, it is. It's not random. It's planned
it's
variation
the same
and progress.
patterns
Yes.
over and over, but the exercises are a little different to keep it fresh because people like something new all the time.
Yeah, and they're going to see movements that they don't normally see in facilities.
Right.
And another thing we do in our programs is something called RPE, so rate of perceived exertion. A lot of times you'll see programs that have percentages and they don't give you like that intricate instruction of like, all right, this is based off of a scale of 1 to 10, and we have examples of 1 to 10, how it should feel per person. So my 10 is different than Rob's 10 and your 10. And I think a lot of times people write programs, they just throw it out there, right? Do whatever, or this is the RX version, right?
Yeah.
Or RX Plus, which we can get into a whole conversation.
Oh, got it.
But I think that what we do well is RPE scale. And give people an opportunity to do a 3 this week and then next week maybe do a 5 or do a 4. And it's like a system, right? It's self-propelled. Again, it's symmetrical, self-propelled programming.
And regarding RPE, I think people think, all right, 1 to 10. 8
I'm a living
is
8,
80% effort. No, it's not that
not
simple.
even close.
So we do have a guide in our templates that
Yep.
show how you should feel at each number. And I think especially when you haven't worked out that way before, there's a learning curve.
Yep.
But if you can, if you pay attention to your body, if you pay attention to the monitors, the weights you're using, whatever, then you'll learn it.
Yeah.
Because like one thing, I'm glad you like mentioned that because that's really important. That's the most important. But you also see me, and we put on there like percentages.
Yeah.
That's just to teach you because like a lot of people do percentage based. Is sometimes 70% feels like 90%, but it says RPE of 7.
Yeah.
So
I was
you
just
need to
about
go
to
by
say
the
that.
RPE because like you could be tired, your nervous system, what did you do the day before? Did you get sleep? But so that means that changes. So that's going to make you more aware of like, all right, you know what? That percentage feels so heavy. I'm going to stick with what they're telling me to do.
Now, when I used to do my Olympic lifting, I would always set up the Olympic lifts as percentages because they were so much lower than my deadlift and squat. So those were always RPE.
Yeah.
So if I'm feeling weak, like I'm not gonna be able to get in there and multiple reps at a 5 back squat. Like I might have to lower it 20.
Your RPE is for that day.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And we don't really like
always
program much maxes. At
No,
most,
no.
you might once in a while like a heavy single for the day or something like that. There's this unnecessary for
we're not
general
testing.
populations.
Right.
Like,
Whole different.
Yeah.
And I think along that same vein, I want to bring up the rest periods. We program specific rest periods and at least X or this amount of time, because if we put rest as needed, especially the CrossFitters are going to go right back at it.
30 seconds.
And if you guys want to talk a little bit more about what happens during rest.
Well, that's so important because
That's
like they
extremely
don't
important.
like especially I would say the CrossFit crowd, mixed modality crowd. That rest they do not understand. It is completely working different energy systems. There's something like that. There's technologies that are coming out. I wish it would come out that are going to tell you you're going to put in a specific way of exercising, and it's going to tell you
When
just
to
through
start, yeah,
your
your breathing.
metrics
Yep.
on when it's time to do something. Like, for instance, apply metric, or to go back to a heavy squat and tell you, like, hey, you're not recovered enough to go ahead and elicit enough response. Like, it
Yeah.
can be detrimental if you go back to it earlier.
Yeah.
Like, a lot of people would take a lot more rest
Oh, yeah.
if they knew
Right.
what they're doing is actually giving them diminished returns than it is actually being beneficial. And that's,
Yeah.
I see that all the time.
It's funny you said, like, when we bring up the CrossFitters, because when I got into weightlifting, I would take like a minute break, minute and a half,
You gas.
and then I see these other guys at my first meet. I was doing that. I was like 40 reps in, warming up,
Yeah.
and everybody's doing like every 5 minutes, one rep. I'm like, I'm just like ADD because I built up that CrossFit mindset.
Right.
Like, I just got to get after it.
It's funny. I actually was in a gym and I didn't understand that for a long time of like the importance of rest time with weightlifting. So I used to call it WAIT lifting, and then people would be like, "What?" And I'm like, no, like you really do need to wait, like take your time instead of But it's so true because
funny.
the idea is to repeat that effort over
Right.
a longer period of time.
Right.
Volume has had to be super high.
And like almost
Yeah.
like perfect reps.
It needs to be. And that's why people like even go back to like a lot of our program. We tell people videotape for feedback. That's not only for us to coach you or for your coach to coach you, but for you to see the difference between rep 3 and rep 4 or set 3 and set 4. You have to see that difference. You have to be that eye
Right,
for yourself.
right.
And people always look at it like, oh, well, you're just filming for content. No, I'm filming for feedback.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
filming
Yeah.
to get an eye on it or to repeat the same movement and same effort and quality over a longer period of time.
Okay.
Yeah, and people don't realize like in strength work and like aerobic work's kind of pretty similar, especially like real intense bouts. But like full recovery or close to full recovery is around 5 minutes.
At least.
So if you're in like really high percentages, you have to take about that much time. Now, I'm not saying
on your
we don't
hands.
ever use short. You don't use short rest periods for like repeatability or like strength endurance.
Yeah.
But that's like another specific way. But when it's written away for like working on strength and the practice of the movement, there's a lot of rest that needs to be in there.
Yep. I agree.
Yeah, and Rob, you just mentioned repeatability, and that's another template that we
Yeah.
can touch on right now. Barbell repeatability. So in CrossFit, barbell cycling is, a popular and necessary skill. I think done incorrectly a lot. There's some, true Olympic weightlifters hate seeing that,
It's always done correctly in
But our answer to that, because it's going to happen, is this barbell repeatability template, which repeatability is not cycling. Cycling's touch and go over and over again. Repeatability is fast and precise singles. So Rob, do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, what happens is you see people is like they don't do those movements precise over and over again. And when the way to do it is you have to start with a certain amount of rest, and then you can shorten that rest period as you get better at it. And usually it's as you go the lighter weight, but you never go to where the movements aren't sharp on
Right.
there. And it's like a real quick sample. You start out with a certain weight, and it's every 30 seconds a clean and jerk, sharp every time. Then you take some rest, you go to a lighter weight, and then it's every 20 seconds, sharp every time. And then you go ahead and you go to a lighter weight again, and then you go every 10 seconds, sharp every time you move through an amount of time. And then when you're in an actual workout that's a test, and there's 20 clean and jerks, you can do them about every 10 to 15 seconds sharp every time.
Pace.
And you use that pace every time. So that will transfer over to CrossFit workouts.
Right.
And we did a lot with
yeah.
Jeff, did a lot of it when he was competing and stuff.
Yeah, I was about to say, this is the perfect program to prep for the open,
Yeah.
like with the barbell work, to teach you that, because pacing is everything across our
Over and
Yeah.
over.
So you need to understand when you get fatigued, like how much can I handle? Like you said, every 5 seconds, every 10 seconds,
Yeah.
can I hit that rep and recover?
You want to make those movements second nature. And the only
Right.
way to make those almost second nature is to do hundreds of reps, not under fatigue, and sharp.
Yeah.
And a note on this template, the repeatability, you should have some Olympic weightlifting experience,
yeah,
a
yeah,
coach, that
yeah.
sort of thing. Don't have a newbie just.
Yeah,
No.
going out there
Rip it.
looking crazy.
Yeah,
Don't do that.
exactly.
We do not encourage that, please.
Yeah, we're not there. So.
Yeah, most of the stuff. Like for instance, the power building and athletic, you don't have to have a CrossFit background.
No.
You would just have to miss out on some of the stuff that you're not familiar with, which is fine. Because
Right.
we wrote up 6-day-a-week programs. Technically, you could do 4 to 5 days a week and be more than enough for
Yeah,
an individual.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if you do CrossFit, this is better than CrossFit. I'm gonna be honest.
Yeah.
And I do CrossFit personally, and I do it for more the social aspect and shared suffrage. But I can promise you, this is a better standalone program. CrossFit being secondary
Yeah.
than anything that you're going to find, because it is symmetrical. It is going to give you longevity. It's going to make it to where you can do this for a longer period of time. CrossFit has an expiration date for most people. especially if you're in a competitive space.
Right.
But for the sense of longevity, these programs like these are going to keep you moving, feeling better much, much longer.
Yeah, I mean, the CrossFit has like great principles, and I kind of say this all the time. That a lot of their principles are based that like just about everybody kind of unanimously like kind of understands. But then there's like the interpretation and the layout of how those programs are set up.
Yeah.
That's not the best way to do that.
No.
That we see out there all the time, but they don't change their format. And we went ahead and we took a totally different approach on the format, and we've seen like tons of success. And the gym done it for years.
Yeah, and people who are stuck in that space of like foggy CrossFit, like, oh, I don't want to do this. You need something that has structure to it, and it's different. I think that's for anybody. Like, not saying that you have to do, a full program, but you need something that's different because CrossFit is the same loop over and over.
Yeah, and also when you're programming, like something we see in there, and a lot, it's pretty popular right now, is the hypertrophy work, which is kind of funny because CrossFit used to make fun of like bodybuilding.
Right?
They used to make fun of it. Now, like I think we all know that it could be really beneficial.
Yeah,
But like we program a lot of it in there, but you see people when they go to program it, it's improperly programmed. And what they're doing is they're doing a layout for stuff that they see in CrossFit, and they're programming that. It's best programmed the way it's supposed to be set.
The intent.
Yeah, we used to talk all the time when maybe about 2.5 years ago, seeing these top athletes are doing 200 reps per time with a curl bar.
Oh,
It's like,
yeah.
what are y'all doing?
Yeah, I mean,
damage.
Yeah, I'm like, you just did 200 pull-ups.
Yeah.
What are you doing?
That's the thing you don't understand, and this is the things to pay attention to programming is like volume's volume on everything. And so you go ahead and you have a lot of pulling and pressing under intensity, and then you go ahead and you program hundreds of reps on these small muscle groups. That's going to put more pressure on these joints when you're going to use them again.
Yep.
It's not necessary to have that much volume. You're already doing a ton of pulling and pressing.
Yeah, and it's ISO. It's isometric.
Yeah,
When you take it from a compound movement to an isometric movement, you're going to get hurt with the isometric movement every time if you've already done compound movement. So I've done 100 pull-ups. I'm going to do 100 curls. I'm not going to get hurt. I'm going to get hurt doing the pull-ups. I'm going to get hurt doing the curls.
Right.
And then
People don't realize that.
Whenever you go to pull again, then the tissue's a little compromised.
Exactly.
And,
that much more load and weight on there.
I see it all the time. You can tell when they're programming. It's like, hey, they're programming like different. Let's go into like bicep, different versions of bicep. I said, yeah, but it's all the same
Lever. Yeah.
Yeah, like you're in the same plane. Like you're doing basically barbell curl, dumbbell curl, and it's all standing. It's with the body. Like you want to like work the bicep, lower the reps, change the angles.
Yeah.
And that's going to be so much more beneficial.
Way
You can do like a quarter of that.
Yeah.
Right.
There's a few principles of understanding how to do hypertrophy work and properly program it. And an EMOM is not the best way to do it.
No.
Yeah, I saw the most when I was competitive in CrossFit, when I separated the bodybuilding stuff and start, like you said, applying different angles, different movement types.
Yep.
And same with like the strict pull-ups, all the different variations of gymnastics, isolating it, lowering the reps, weights, depths, all that stuff. And I'm big, like 215, 220 out there competing with 170-pound guys. Like, but I'm banging out 75 pull-ups like it's nothing because I train a different way to fit my body type.
Yeah, and I wanted to get into
and wasn't
like,
injured.
with all this. Like
exactly.
we do have like some gymnastic work in there a little bit.
Right.
Sometimes we have some progressions because I don't have a problem with any movement.
But define gymnastics because it's not kipping handstand push-ups and kipping pull-ups and things like that. Yeah.
And I don't,
True gymnastics.
Yeah,
not
yeah.
CrossFit
I don't
gymnastics.
have a problem with any of those moves. I just have a problem with them doing them under fatigue.
Yeah.
Yes.
With general,
Right.
like, so you got to really kind of
Or not being ready for them.
or
Exactly.
not being properly trained and it's inappropriately programmed and all that stuff. But so we will do some. Most of our stuff is strict on there, and then it's appropriately programmed.
living
Once in a
strict.
while, you see them in a conditioning workout. Very limited amount of like how much volume we're doing on it, and we're really careful about like certain type of fatigue on it. And the one thing, like I know Dom is really careful, and I am too, is if we're programming a workout, and let's say whatever it is, and we're doing it for time or whatever type of workout, and I program in it and I aerobically fatigue you, and then I ask you to walk up to something complex and it might be heavy, and you organize yourself and you go ahead and do it. That's a little different than if I program movements that are going to fatigue muscle groups that need to stabilize when you go to do it. That's kind of dangerous.
Yeah.
And I try to stay away
Very
from that.
dangerous, especially to an untrained
Yeah,
individual.
you don't understand. It's like, oh my God, like I did all these handstand and then I tried to do the snatch and it just fell down on top of me. Like,
No,
that does not
I
sound
have a
very
video
smart.
of him in the open.
Oh, yeah.
Probably like 10 years ago. It was an AMRAP of, had toes to bar. Your grip is gone. Afterwards, you take like a 2-minute rest and you do a max clean and jerk. He grabbed the bar, ripped it, came out of his hands, flew backwards. I'll show you the video.
Yeah,
It's the
please do,
best.
yeah.
We should superimpose
Right.
this
Yeah.
on this.
Yeah,
It's true.
And he
though.
just
Yeah.
looked
It's like
at
I have
his hands like, you failed me.
It was like
And people think it's fake, this video. It's so funny.
And that's fine for athletes that are training for it, and you can kind of like throw them
That's
into a
the
loop.
sport, yeah.
Yeah. But when you're programming stuff and then you're fatiguing them and then you're asking them to do maximal lifts, like there was a workout, and I could pick on it open for a second. It was like a 10 or 1 to 10 of front squats with dumbbells and then bar
burpees.
face and burpees.
Yeah.
And then after that, they asked you to go to a maximal lift.
Yeah.
So your legs were just completely engorged with blood.
Smoked, yeah.
So then they're asking you to go to a maximal lift that has a lot of force production and deceleration on that catch.
Yep.
You go to squat. That is a really quick way to have a tear in your quad.
Yeah.
A really quick way.
I remember that
Athletes,
workout.
that's fine.
I
That's
did-
what they're
I did
training
power
for.
clean. I couldn't
But-
even do a squat. Man. I did
Yeah.
power clean.
Yeah.
Like you know how dangerous that is to do that and then go like to a maximal lift to ask general population. That's very dangerous.
Yeah. All right. So you mentioned the open. So let's just talk about one more template, which is chaotic capacity.
Yeah,
We
it's
have
my
two
favorite.
different ones.
Yes.
One's for general fitness or not necessarily general fitness. It could be anybody. You do not have to be a CrossFitter. One's got some tests sprinkled in and some movements for functional fitness. So, Rob, do you want to talk about what chaotic capacity is, why you came up with the name, who's it for, all that good stuff, and you guys interject too because Jeff's done a lot of it, especially
Yeah, this is my favorite way
getting
to
out of
get my cardio
retirement.
in.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, so I mean, I'll go like in a quick history. So chaotic capacity was me trying to understand, and this was back in like when I was really deep into competing in CrossFit and working with athletes that were competing in it and stuff. And I had a lot of master athletes that made it to the games every year, and trying to understand. So like true, like the standard aerobic work to me when I was looking at it, it has its like benefits, but it wasn't transferring over the way I was looking for what was happening in a CrossFit workout, because like blood pressure's all over the place and that your heart rate's all over the place and the breathing's all erratic. And so what I started doing is I started toying with different aerobic interval training and trying to mimic fatigue.
Right.
And so what I was doing was I wanted me and other athletes to be able to practice things more under fatigue, but not actually from doing all the movements and causing all the damage from
Right.
that. So what I started figuring out was through using air bikes and other tools is that I can create a very similar feeling to the fatigue and then have them go into a workout, minimize the damage because they're not doing that much, but still have the feeling. Because a lot of fatigue, what it is, it's not just like physiological with muscle and breathing, it's also mental.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so, like when you would see people do an open workout or do a workout, the first time they did it, they did like okay, but the second time they did it, they did better. Well, that's because they knew where they were at the whole
Right.
time,
Know
understanding
that
the
point they're
fatigue.
gonna
Like,
hit.
oh
Yeah.
shit, my legs are burning now. I already been here. I know what this is all about. So that's what it was. It was me trying to understand it. It's kind of morphed into a few different things, but I use a lot of different principles in there, and it's a lot of different intervals done like different styles mixed together, and then some steady state work mixed in there. But I'm always trying to get people to understand when I'm programming that is how to recover in movement.
Yeah.
And so like what you have them do is you kind of like have them get to high heart rates and then certain responses you're looking for, and then make them go into another cyclical tool and try to figure out how to recover. Where can I kind of find my pace that where I can actually recover in these movements?
Yeah. Yeah, looking back, my last event, 2018 Granite Games, went 10 months of weightlifting, no cardio at all. We did, 3 months to prep for it?
Yeah.
And I ended up getting third place.
Wow.
And my aerobic capacity, like everything was just like supercharged going this route because I wasn't doing all the wear and tear.
Yeah.
Like to get my body in a state where like my pull-ups are so fatigued, now we can do something like this when my breathing is ramped up and I don't have to do as much volume to get to that point.
Yeah.
Like that helped me so much.
Yeah, because Jeff came in at the perfect time when he came up and he told me we started working together, and he's like, "I want to do Granite." I'm like, "Damn, wait, like, you got the time."
It's like I've been off almost a year.
Yeah, I was like,
Next week.
and I was like, you know what? I've been working on this kind of protocol a little bit, and I think it could be beneficial because it's not a replacement for all the base like aerobic work that you want to build up, like your conditioning and stuff. But once you get a good base, then it's the place, especially in mixed modality CrossFit, where it is a lot different than this steady state pacing on there. And then I started, so let's try this. And we saw like phenomenal results with Jeff with that. But I mean, he already had a base.
Yeah.
That was
Right,
there.
right.
It was there before, so we were able to kind of pull that out.
Yeah.
But then over time, it's kind of, I've morphed it into more health and longevity for people to be able to use. And it's so different than what you're seeing there. So there's a lot of different interval tools that are easier for people to do. And I use intervals too, even for steady state. I just have them just change a little bit on there.
Right.
Yeah.
Because like steady state's a lot of people, because zone 2 is real big, but if you just stay like in a certain place, I don't even use heart rate monitors anymore. I haven't in years and stuff. But if you're like able to have like certain conversations, but what it is, it's boring.
Yeah.
Just to sit there for like 40 minutes. And
I was just
Yeah,
thinking
500 meter row repeats, and all that.
it's
like
real boring.
the mental stimulation of it, because you're looking at your paces, like we do calories, like 30 on, 30 off, or wattage, like all these different things while you're doing it. You're just like constantly working on that stuff. So like as a CrossFitter, like I know I got ADD.
Yeah.
So like you like a lot of stuff going on. So with this, you might go from a ski erg to a long row to an air bike with a little bit of rest in between, but hitting like 3 different styles. It just, that mental stimulation is.
Yeah. So
It's good.
chaotic capacity. Chaotic capacity,
Keep
it
that in.
replicates the chaos of a CrossFit workout.
Yeah.
Yep.
It helps you deal with that stress, maintain composure, increase capacity. You learn a lot about yourself in terms of how you should push your pacing, and you learn how to recover while moving.
Yeah.
So I think those are like the big
It gives,
takeaways.
it gives you gears.
It's a lot
Yeah.
different than I
Right.
see any other aerobic training out there. I mean, I took a lot of principles from like different people like Joel Jameson and them, because he worked a lot with MMA. Because when I looked at MMA, I was like, well, that's kind of pretty similar. Like, there's a lot of chaos going on in the fight there and
Ups
stuff.
and downs, ebbs and flows.
Yeah, so like
for
when
sure.
you go to mix like different type of power intervals in there with different type of timers, it's all of a sudden like it's a completely different stimulus that you feel like you're getting on there.
Right. I think this and repeatability, perfect for the open.
Oh,
like,
Yeah.
You combine these two right before,
Right.
Yeah.
you're ready to
Well,
go.
the old open, we don't, now they, you know.
I don't know how they do it now.
And it
but,
won't interfere with anyone's programming
Right.
too.
No.
Like
This is
it's,
what,
you know.
3 days a week?
Yeah.
Yeah,
And you
like
can
there's
do
3 days a
two,
week,
which
but
is
2 would
mix it up.
2 would be enough.
Well, we
like,
even said that. We were like, this is not a standalone program.
Right.
This
Yeah.
is
Right.
an addition to what you are currently doing.
Yeah.
yeah.
And it gives you a chance to implement it and put it in the right exact
Now.
place instead of putting it, random, like this is what I do for a living. No. This is a complement to what you are currently doing.
Yeah.
It's
I
not a
always
sex
think of
sport.
it like with our supplements, like we want to fill the gaps in the athlete's day.
Exactly.
We can do this with the program.
for
like
sure.
like if they're missing a piece on the cardio or the repeatability or whatever it is, they can add that in. It's not too much of a burden.
This goes great with Flow Pro, by the way. Shout out.
It does like robotics. Yeah. But the thing is, we have a lot of aerobic work in the templates and the strength
Yeah.
templates. Even though it says strength, we have a lot of aerobic. I'm a huge believer in aerobic work, and in, not just aerobic work, but just conditioning in general and stuff. Like a lot of times when we write like a conditioning workout, if one's long, then the other one needs to be more like kind of power-based interval, almost on there, and then you'll cover 90% of the individuals just by those two, like one a longer steady state and then one more power-based interval based. And then that would cover a lot of people in general. And that's kind of like what we do in the templates too.
Right.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk about one more template before I get to my training questions, which I think you guys have answered a lot of them already. But this is another non-standalone, so accessory program called Midline with a Purpose. And I know that as a gym owner, I see people that do not know how to brace properly or don't do rotational work, or they're missing a lot. I mean, people 10-minute abs, crunches, all that
Right.
stuff.
Just blast.
And midline is so much more than abs. So Dom and Rob, you guys can talk about this. You both collaborated on
I
this
let Dom
program.
start because Dom's got
Yeah,
big,
this is one of my
core
favorite.
work.
Yeah.
Midline core work. We can call it,
Yeah.
like some people make fun of like midline is like a buzzword. I'm like,
No,
when I
no.
was young and I came up, core was the buzz.
Right.
We're like,
Yeah.
so
In
I'm older than you
1952.
are, and that means like,
No, but I am a big component. This is a big component to my training is core and midline work, because it is, to me, the base. I love training the God-given belt. The abdominal wall is something for me, like somebody who's had back problems for just neglect in my own training. Building, trying to get a huge deadlift, trying to get a big back squat, not doing this work in between. Made a huge difference. So when I would get to these high percentages and these high lifts, I would crap out, or I could do 400-something pound back squat, and then I can't do a single leg RDL. So like there was a huge imbalance in my training. So when I discovered my imbalance with midline work, I noticed that my numbers went up. And not even that, I felt better at those higher numbers, or I felt better in some of those unconventional positions that you would be in during training or in life, right? So for me, this was like a great pairing for my training. And I try to put this in everything that I do in my own personal training and my clients. They know, for one, two things for certain: you will do midline and you will do bracing in a lot of the training that we did. So what we built here was an unconventional way of attacking the core and your midline. So doing, unilateral carries, doing rotational work, doing bracing, doing holds, things that people normally don't do. Now, there is conventional stuff like you have your abs and you have your weighted sit-ups and things like that. Those all have a place. But I think that majority of people who train outside of the normal need things that are complementary to those training modules.
Right, and this is something you would add to your standard training as a finisher every day.
Mobility days, recovery days. Yeah, it is high demanding, but you're not gonna be out for a day if you do midline.
No, we never, like me and you are real similar. Like we never program where it's like body part annihilation.
Yeah.
I never program that. And I think well, that's what
I get to see everybody now.
Yeah, but like it's best like stimulate over and over again, little bits and pieces, and then that's how people over time get better and stronger.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sell better. Annihilation.
I'm sure it would.
That'd be a good name. Yeah.
I mean, I saw a lot of holes in what everyone was doing as far as in programming for their midline, and a lot of people believe all the lifting and stuff is midline work, and it is, but not really.
No.
It's
not focal.
No, it's not. So I saw there's next to no rotational work, next to no bracing work. Really understanding
no
how to
carries, no holds.
And it goes to all the moves. I hardly see any isometric work, and in the midline that's really important.
Absolutely.
Oblique work. And then you have your standard abdominal stuff. What we're seeing was a lot of flexion with the hips. That's what mostly people were doing. It was well, that's not touching hardly any of it at all.
Right.
And even from a recovery standpoint, with a lot of performance PTs, when people have back injuries, the first thing they do is they program unilateral holds, unilateral carries, bird dogs, quadruped, these animal positions, because it is what the body needs. And I think that's what people forget, is that when you are injured, you have these imbalances. It's because of lack of midline, lack of base, lack of core.
Yeah,
it's another one just trying to fill the hole.
Yeah.
That we see the hole.
Exactly.
I mean, you add this in, and it doesn't take very long. It's a 10-minute, at the most.
Well, you're saying earlier about getting stronger.
Yeah.
When I started working with Julian, learning how to brace, hinge, adding movements that we have in here, my numbers shot up through the roof.
Oh, for sure. But I think a lot of trainers too, because I see this on
And squat with
Instagram,
no belt.
don't know how to teach people how to brace.
Yeah,
I will
that's a
see
big
the
thing.
key or hear the cue, pull your belly button to your spine, and I'm no, when they're coaching a deadlift, and I'm just like,
Squeeze.
yes,
Well,
your sphincter muscle.
I'm so surprised. There's been even games level athletes that I've worked with that don't understand how to create inter-abdominal pressure.
Not at all.
Properly,
No,
at all.
not at all.
And they think they're bracing, but what they're doing is they're flexing.
Yeah.
They're flexing their abdominals. That's not bracing.
Not
That's
even,
not the same thing.
Yep.
And I have a lot of drills that I've had to over the years to pick up from different experts. To kind of teach people, and you're so surprised because you're loose. You start moving around.
Right.
It's going to cause some issues over time.
Once
you get your belt.
Right, you learn how to do it. You can feel everything. The entire part just get tight instead of just squeezing your abs.
And understanding how to brace.
Whole
Then when
different.
you're under fatigue in these workouts, you understand how to create that inter-abdominal pressure. But not have to be out of breath or hold your breath.
Yeah.
You can still do it when you're breathing.
Exactly.
That means a lot, but you got to do that away from stuff.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is definitely my favorite programs
I
that
know,
we have,
got a lot.
for sure.
Yeah, they're all your favorite.
You got everything you need.
All right, so we've talked a lot about training already, but I've got some questions for you guys. My first question is, should strength be the biggest focus for general population? And if so, why? And also, what does proper strength training look like?
Okay. I say
Our
I
stuff.
say yes.
I do say yes.
Think,
Both of us, I think, think the same way. But I do believe strength is because one is there's fundamental movements, and so you got to get better at those movements to get better at life in general. I call it it's like the circle of life or whatever. But the better you're at squatting, pressing, and I'm not talking about back squatting. I'm talking about being able to get down, sit down and stand up type of deal.
Right.
Pressing, pulling, and all that is the easier everything else is going to be. Then you have all your kind of sports and jumping and throwing. But like conditioning is really important, but I think it's like, if you can't lunge and walk, like conditioning is going to be tough. Like strength is the base of all athletic endeavors, including life.
Well, and yeah, quality of life.
With no doubt, you know. And I think now that we're seeing like so much research, it's like irrefutable that resistance training is the key everywhere. It used to be like they used to say conditioning, and which is really important, heart health and everything else. And conditioning can definitely go hand in hand with strength, and strength can go definitely hand in hand with conditioning. But strength is the format and the base.
Absolutely. I think the late great Louis Simmons said, "Weak things break." And you know, even people as they get older, you if you don't move, or if you don't have resistance, or you don't have that bearing of weight, your body starts to decay a little bit, muscle, atrophy. And I think that if you have a base of strength training, if you have a base of resistance training, it makes your life that much more enjoyable, and it makes it, a lot easier to move into those later years of your life. And it's, like he said, it just makes it overall better for your overall, system, and it makes it easy for you to progress in any aspect, whether it's sport or life.
And I think a lot of people, not necessarily our audience, but some people don't understand what proper strength training is. I mean, if you're dancing around in a class with dumbbells, you're holding weights, and they think that's strength training. So how would you guys define proper strength training?
Proper strength training, like, and it's progressive, but like the thing is it's not the movement. That it's the design of the format of the workouts.
The intention.
That's it. Because the intention. Because I can take a work, and I kind of went over this with someone, and I'm just going to pick on Orange Theory. Like, I can take an Orange Theory workout, every movement they're doing on there, and change the format and create it as a strength workout.
Yep.
And one, the loads are a little different. Two, the rest periods are different. The amount of volume is going, because people don't realize, it's like we're all like, the body kind of like adapts to signaling. So it's signals that you're sending to it. So, and it like dials that move. So if you go ahead and you have your heart rate high enough, and you're doing like enough reps of something and moving, that's a signal closer to a conditioning cardio signal than it is strength. And so your body is going to go towards that way. And so people don't realize, well, I'm doing squatting, I'm doing, but you can actually have just been doing, riding a bike and doing jumping jacks, and it's the same thing. But what happens is they go ahead and they start doing something, and because in the beginning it's so novelty and new, and they're a little deconditioned, they see a little bit of strength results. It does quickly plateau. Like programs that are not set up properly, everything quickly plateaus. It's like everything works until it doesn't, and then you got to go to stuff that is like based in fundamentals and principles of strength and conditioning.
Absolutely. I think people forget too, even with most a proper strength training program does have components of conditioning. So some of the reps, like you said, the dial is different. You may do higher reps, lower volume, lower weight, lower weight, higher. Like you can mix it back and forth.
Or doing triceps and giant
sets.
And
that has a component of conditioning, because we have built-in rest, and it's the same thing as interval work. You do Orange Theory. If you change the whole format of it, and you did a progression of adaptation or whatever, it's still conditioning. It's just we added a strength component to it. So I think people confuse the two because they are two separate words, but they can go hand in hand in a lot of formats and a lot of modalities.
Also, like, it's not like, so a lot of people get confused with hard workouts as good workouts. They're different. And so like a hard workout, people are looking for, you're sweating, you're feeling like you're fatigued after, and like it kind of whipped your butt, and you feel like you got a lot accomplished. But there's like a lot of times in really good workouts in strength training, you're not laying on the ground. You're not, but later on, adaptation-wise, what it does is completely different and beneficial to there.
Now, in that same vein, for proper strength training, do you think exercise selection and pairing matters?
It's huge.
Absolutely.
Huge. And that's a big mistake in programming that you see is it's like improper pairing and exercise selection. And then they're doing things like kind of like fatiguing or using muscle groups that are going to be needed for something that's more complex or heavier.
So give me an example of a bad pairing, and then give me an example of a good pairing.
CrossFit in particular. So CrossFit is notorious for, Rob introduced this to me. I didn't know there was a name for it, but it's black box programming.
That was old school.
An example is, all right, in our strength work, we're going to do power cleans, right? So this is a workout, real live workout that happened yesterday. Power cleans, 4x7, touch and go. Don't know why you would do that.
But
into a Metcon.
I don't think that's strength work.
It's not, but that's what they would call it. So it's just like a bad example. Power cleans in a workout, in the strength work, into a Metcon, 3 rounds for time, run more power cleans, front squats, and then burpees. So that to me is terrible pairing. Why am I doing a movement that should be idolized and should be for time. It should be like not for time, but for quality. You know, rest periods built in a different environment, and then throw that same modality and the same movement into for time.
Right.
And throw it in with some other conditioners that aren't pairing.
And I'm looking at you're bending over to pick up the bar, you're bending
many
over to
times?
burpee,
Yeah.
and your back is taking
It's
a beating on
flexion
front
and
squats
extension.
too.
I'm
Yeah.
going to jump in big time on
No,
this
please
one.
do.
So, a little different, like, so let's go ahead and let's take the CrossFit total. That's a terrible pairing for general population.
Oh, yeah.
Because you're fatiguing the lower back really bad, and you got a ton of pressure on the CNS with a heavy back squat to go to maximal load, and then you got a deadlift.
Yeah, and-
Those are terrible pairings.
yeah.
Those are terrible pairings to put those kind of low back fatigue and CNS fatigue and movements together. Better pairings are hey, it's a squat, and then I'm doing a version of a push pull, and there's two opposites. Now then you have pairings that are the same muscle groups, so hey, I'm doing shoulder press, bench press, and then push up. Well, that's going to fatigue similar muscle groups. If you're going to program like that, then the amount of reps need to look different on each exercise, and then the rest period in between each exercise, and then the rest period in between. Because a lot of strength training has to do with the rest, and it's not just the movements and the pairing; it's the rest between too on there. So that makes a huge difference.
And the variation of each movement too,
Yeah.
those examples. You can do all those movements and 3 different variations, and they will be complementary, or they'll have adequate rest time in between. So if I'm doing body weight movement or body weight lifting, body weight, those can be complementary to each other. But not a lot of the time. People are weight, no body weight, or no rotation, no holds, whatever it is. But that's the same thing. The CrossFit Total is a terrible, terrible pairing of the CNS.
Yeah, and I think low back is very a lot of
Precious.
programs don't even realize sometimes take the Pendlay row for example. You're bent over. You maybe shouldn't do that for general population on the same days you do a deadlift. And they might be thinking,
I would say for most people,
but it's a pull.
Right.
Yeah, but you're bent over the whole time.
Yeah.
Some people don't
you're in
think
flexion the
that
entire
way.
time,
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing with programming is people are not seeing is the volume that's set up and how many times you're doing similar body parts in the week too. Because not only programming is in the day, it's what's going on in a week. How many times did you bend over? How many times you hinge? And there's a lot of debate over it. I say programming is most important, and coaching is important too. But programming is number one.
Yes.
I can take a coach that's only at a certain skill level with a proper program. He can go ahead and follow, progress individuals with it, and go. But the best coach in the world, if that program is bad, it doesn't matter. He's still got to do 200 deadlifts to teach the people in a week. There's nothing he can do about it. But be upset that he's actually teaching.
Yeah, for real. Honestly.
And speaking of pairing, what do you guys think about pairing cardio and strength in the same session?
There's a recipe for it. I think that
Can be done.
The way it is done in the most popular fashion is most of the time inefficient. But I think there is a recipe for it, and we have done it in our templates as well in some fashions. But I think it is a recipe for it.
Yeah.
But when it's done consistently, is there that interference effect?
Yeah. So I'll go. So interference effect is disruption to adaptation. So that means when you're doing something, it's going to interfere with the next thing you're going to do. Has a lot to do with time in between. When Jeff was talking about, he would do bodybuilding hours later or whatever. That's going to nullify most of the problems with that. But in the small window, it is the intensity and what you're doing. So if you're doing strength and then you have intervals at a certain intensity, or you're doing long steady, you're not going to get too much of that. But if you're doing strength training, you have real intense bouts, which Metcons mostly are. You're going to have a ton of it, and especially if you're using similar muscle groups, fatiguing that, you're going to have a ton of that issue.
So how do you feel Metcons should be appropriately programmed, knowing most or many CrossFit gyms start with let's do a strength and then let's move to the Metcon.
So that's a generic way to program for most people, and that was put together from a long time ago. People trying to figure out how to go ahead and program strength and have metabolic conditioning together. And the first iterations of that were from it was called black box training. It's max effort black box training. You're doing a max effort, when you see CrossFit do 1-1-1-1 or 3-3-3-3s, and then you would have an intense bout of a Metcon underneath it. That was set up to have some time in between, quite a bit. But people started doing it in a class structure,
which is
and
an hour.
it's too close. Very disruptive, and not only physiologically, like I said before, but mentally. it's an issue. If you're like back squatting heavy and then you got to go do this like really intense leg squat clean, whatever, that'll cause a lot of disruption. And whoever doesn't think so just doesn't read the literature enough to understand what's going on there.
Or you have these people who start out with like that and they're getting crazy results and then they stop suddenly, because of that reason. Yeah, anything you do differently outside of your normal will give you results because it's new, it's different.
Right.
Well, what happened, it's novelty. You see it, and that's why people get like married to it because they see it. And there are people that can do it and they're doing it good, but there's not many that I'm seeing on there. But what you end up doing is you end up getting diminished returns. And it reminds me of like when I'm talking to someone about, because some people are like so confused. Like when you're working and you work 40 hours, you make $20 an hour. And then we go past that. Then when you're working, you're getting time and a half or double time.
Yeah.
Well, what about if you did the 40 hours and then all of a sudden you're getting half time? Would you do that?
No.
That's what diminished returns are doing, is it's cutting down the amount of adaptation you're going to get.
Yeah.
And so when you start pairing and pushing things like that, that's what happens. Instead of like being able to receive more benefits from a workout, you're receiving less. So then you end up trying to do more to receive the benefits. So then you go down this vicious cycle, and then you see like injuries and things start occurring with that.
Yeah. All right, so we've talked a lot about training. Got definitely not everything in you guys'
we definitely got a lot
brains.
more.
But let's save it for
save
some other episodes and
Yeah.
see you guys next time.